Greta Van Fleet is a very polarizing band. Everyone seems to have an opinion on them because they sound a lot like Led Zeppelin. For some people, that's a good thing. For some people, that's a bad thing. Willie, do you think they're good for blues rock and rock and roll?
I think they're better than good. I think they're great. And I know it's a basic, my first basic point to that is if you get people listening, that's a good thing. If you draw attention to what you're doing musically for the right reasons, which is the music, and they are, I think that's a great thing. Because for every so 5, 10 people who really love something that's a little more commercially accessible, like Greta Van Fleet, there's going to be some people that are going to say, hey, I think I've heard these guys before. Oh, they sound a bit like Zeppelin. And then if you go to Zeppelin, there's going to be a couple people who are going to say, hey, how did these guys start? And then you're going to get deeper into the blues. So, we were talking about gatekeepers. I feel like Greta Van Fleet is perhaps a gateway. And they are perhaps serve as a gateway to listeners. I understand. I don't agree. But I do get the idea that, wow, they do sound an awful lot like Zepp. But I think there's a big difference here. They write their own material.
And they do write good songs.
I agree. I think their songs are great. The way I judge a lot of songs sometimes is how many times do I listen to it in a row before I get tired of it. And a couple of theirs I've had on repeat for a while. I think that their vibe is sort of lifted from Zeppelin, but they have written their own. Zeppelin, not as much. So I think that maybe cut these guys some slack, enjoy the music for what it is, which I think is great, and be happy that maybe there's a band out there who is young, vibrant, and commercially successful that is bringing people hopefully back into the blues.
And many times, Willie, the same people who are kind of trashing Greta Van Fleet are the same people that are saying, how come there isn't any good music in the mainstream anymore? And then when a band like Greta Van Fleet gets in the mainstream, they just trash them.
Right, exactly. It's like, here it is. This is right. You can't have it both ways. Or I guess you can look to have it both ways, but you'll always be disappointed. I don't see anything. They certainly seem to love what they're doing too. It seems authentic. You can, believe it or not, you can be authentic and commercially successful. It's often a rarity, but it can happen. And I think they've achieved that. So kudos to them. I hope they continue.
And if you've ever been to one of their shows, they've got young people, they've got older people. It's a very eclectic mix. And there's not a lot of artists that can do that, that can draw from both audiences. And what you said, Willie, about them being a gateway band, I totally agree. If someone gets into Greta Van Fleet, and because of that, then they discover Rival Sons, and then they discover Philip Sayce, that's a great thing that you can have a band like that lure more people in to a genre that desperately needs more people to listen to it.
I agree. And I think that deep in their hearts, most listeners would agree. Name your bands that you love. My guess is those first songs that brought you in weren't the ones on the second half of the albums. They were the ones that were on the radio repeatedly and repeatedly, that were catchy, that were accessible to everyone. And it just so happened that it hit a nerve. That's how you got to the backsides. That's how you got into the other recordings, the studio sessions. You don't start there. You got to start somewhere. And for some people, that may be Greta Van Fleet. And I think that's awesome.